Good morning and welcome to another partner webinar with Senior Living Smart. Today we'd like to welcome John Leon Guerrero, who spent 15 years in direct mail and database marketing, institutional sales, and providing white label products for several Fortune 100 financial service companies. In that span, he gained valuable experience in branding, copywriting, analysis-driven sales, and process innovation, especially as it relates to marketing. He joined the Fisher Group nearly 2 years ago, excited to bring his experience to senior living, where many of these proven concepts and automation and integration tools have been underutilized. He hopes to help compassionate caregivers become more effective marketers and help independent operators grow to their potential. Let me turn the webinar over to John, who will discuss keys to successful event marketing.
Thank you, Renee. Hello, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. We're going to talk today about the keys to successful event marketing. Now, success for an event can mean something slightly different to each person on the team, but in most universal terms, we're talking really about three things. Attracting a large volume of prospects, whether you're launching a brand new community or you're working to fill your existing community, you always want a good-sized crowd at your events. Aside from a greater field of potential residents, a better turnout just creates good excitement in your community, and everybody loves a good party. You want more of these prospects to become residents. More prospects plus a better conversion rate, of course, equals higher occupancy. And a good party shows demand, and demand encourages prospects to make a decision. Or maybe your occupancy is already exceptional, and what you're after is a longer resident value and residents who are connectors. Residents who bring their friends to you tend to reinforce your community's social fabric. And as a referral, those friends come to you with further emotional investment and usually at a lower acquisition cost. So with those objectives in mind, today we're going to give you what I hope are some fresh ideas about how you measure the success of your event, selecting the right event for your community and your objectives, some of the small details that can turn into great event pitfalls and how to overcome them, attracting prospects who are more likely to be successful and profitable residents for you, the prongs of a multi-channel approach to your marketing for events, designing a high-quality campaign and executing it successfully and efficiently, and the importance of branding and uniformity and how easy it is to maintain for your communities. And then we're going to summarize with some do's and don'ts. Now, you probably recognize that the overall theme of these topics and of today's webinar is exactly the aim of Senior Living Smart, of Fisher Group, and of our fellow partners within the Senior Living Smart family of services. We want to take the strategies and the tools of the enormously successful companies and put them in the hands of more boutique operators like all of you. So how do you measure your success? Well, first of all, you have to decide on your objective. Is it to get 20 new prospective residents in the door? Is your event a success if it results in you booking 10 tours? Or maybe you're looking for 5 new senior care professionals who refer residents to you. How about gathering the data that you're going to use to measure? Are you pre-registering your guests as much as you can? And then, of course, you can use registration forms to be ready for and welcome anyone who shows up. And build all the steps in your event and the information you gather around your plan to follow up with your prospects. Now, once you figure out what a successful event will bring you and what you're going to do with it, then you can start to entertain what kind of event to throw. So now we'll talk about choosing the type of event. We have social events, of course. Anything that brings seniors and their families in. You probably have an Easter event coming up. Mother's Day is coming. There's lots of summer stuff. So anything you can do to gather seniors and their families together in your community would be considered a social event. You have plenty of options there. You can throw an educational event. Those are partnerships that may involve guest experts, and those are great because you can bring in seniors and their families around topics that are specific to their needs, and you can tailor your content around their desires to learn about specific things. Also, guest experts are terrific because they often bring a population of folks to you. So those kind of partnerships are great. Educational events are terrific, and you can have professional events centered around attracting referral sources by providing them education too. We'll talk a little bit about each of these. So first, social events. Now, of course, holiday or seasonal parties are great. Valentine's Day just passed, and a lot of people threw events around Valentine's Day. Easter is coming. Spring, hopefully, is hitting most of you. And culinary themes are great. To combine the two, we had a few communities we know of that threw Valentine's Day events that had specifically to do with chocolate. So you can do dessert themes. Any culinary theme is great, and a great thing to gather people around. You can have musical events like the one depicted on the slide. That looks like a lot of fun. And musical events, again, bring together like-minded people for a good time. Pet-related gatherings are terrific as well because they show that your community is focused on the importance of companionship. Pet lovers tend to gather and have a good time around other pet lovers. I know I do. And then you have senior center or church groups that can help you provide social events too. Senior centers often have social events already on their calendars. So it's easy to get a population of seniors to know your community just by providing some sort of venue for an already existing senior center event. In exchange for listening to a few minutes of your content, those seniors would gather at your place instead of the senior center, and you'd provide cookies. Church groups work the same way as well. Now, there are also educational events. Most popular are probably health or condition-specific types of events where you're offering some education about things like hearing loss or coping with changes in vision that come with aging, managing diabetes. All kinds of things can bring people together for an educational event. You can do estate or financial planning or elder law as people are concerned about legal ramifications of aging and changes in your lifestyle and your living arrangements as you become a senior and progress into your maturity. And then fitness and active lifestyle. Now, as baby boomers age and we start to see your ability to be active is more and more important. Yoga events and things like that just keep people moving and keep joints going. Very, very popular. And then you can have nutrition, also a concern, again, specifically for baby boomers. They're really tuned into it. Cooking demos are great because they allow you to showcase what a great job your staff does and how well-fed somebody would be at your community. And events around senior safety. Senior safety can be anything from continuing to be active, mobility, driving. And then for professional events, now these are the type of events where you would attract folks who refer business to you. Referral sources among healthcare professionals in your area. The most popular and most attractive thing for those folks is if you host a training or certification that they're going to have to do anyway, and you pay for it. All they have to do is show up at your community. It allows healthcare professionals to be more familiar with you, and hopefully you become a local hub so that everybody knows that they can gather around your place. You provide a meeting venue for the things that they do together as professionals, like policy dialogue. And of course, you get to include appropriate staff from your community as well. Now, getting the details right, of course, it all starts with having a plan. The way that you have a plan and develop it is by building a planning worksheet. All too often, we run into veterans in our industry who have planned and executed so many events that they figure, well, I'm just going to, shoot from the hip like I've always done, and it's always worked. Well, guess what? It works a little better when you can dig into the details. And if you understand your objectives and all of the steps to execute them, then you won't leave anything out. And then share it with the team. You have a whole team of professionals around you. If you make instructions clear, you'll also get your team to buy in. And if they buy into the success of your event, then everybody will do their part and you'll all be pulling on the rope together. So make sure you have a plan. Make sure you build a planning worksheet. We'll show you one in just a second. And then the details that you dig into, well, some of them seem pretty silly actually, but the alternative, not paying attention to them, is having them go wrong. So understand your objectives and share them with the team. Let's take a look at that planning worksheet. So again, we're going to dig into the details. First thing is your impressive setting. Okay, you can see that there's room, set, and equipment. It seems silly to write down how many tables you're going to need, whether or not you have a projector in the room, your power cord and extension cord. These little details are absolutely important to creating the impression that you want to create. Similarly, staying stocked with food and having somebody assigned the responsibility for menu items, making sure the beverages are stocked, your linens are crisp, your chairs and tables are arranged. All of these details can be easily overlooked, and as long as you create the impression that you want, you're going to be successful with the folks who come to see you. Now, impression from the start, these again are just the things that lead into your event. How do your invitations look? How does your place look when people arrive? And then your outcome. You absolutely want to begin with the end in mind, as the saying goes. So take a look at who showed up. Do you know what's next for all the people who showed up? And I hope you do, because that's the only way that you're going to really understand the return on the investment. So let's dig into getting those details right. Here's a shot that I hope represents your community in the middle of your event. The pitfall, though, is if this shot is of your parking lot just before your event. Make sure your employees are sensitive to the impression your community casts on your prospects and their families, starting with when they pull into the parking lot. Make parking convenient for your prospective residents and those who will likely come visit them after they move in. Also, something as simple as printing out name tags for your pre-registered guests will save a lot of time and will show your prospects that your community is organized and likes to be prepared. It seems like such a small detail, but when you don't prepare, you end up with guests all crowded around a table or waiting in line for the one marker you put out, and the lobby of your beautiful community looks like this. While we're on the subject of pre-registering your guests, have registration forms handy too. You can either take this information down when your guests confirm or fill it out for them when they check in at your event. It's your opportunity to capture all the information you need to perform a thorough follow-up, and so you can understand your ROI when you look back on your event. And when you do the analysis of your event, have you planned your follow-up? Did you capture from each one of your prospects some information about what collateral they should see next? Do you know whom you should call and when? Is your sales team prepared with the right information for each prospect or his or her family? These are all the things that lead up to booking the tour and closing the sale. So you have to know them about each and every prospect. Now let's go back a few steps and talk about attracting qualified prospects. First of all, to reach your target consumer, what do you know? Usually most community operators will start off with income, zip code, an age range for your prospective resident, and whether or not they live with adult decision-making children in the household. And all of these things are indeed important, but a lot of times when this is all you have to start with, you end up with a very large population of names, many of which might not specifically be suited for you. So, all great candidates, but there are greater candidates as well. Now, it's the job of data modeling companies to figure out what don't you know. And when you perform a resident modeling, you come up with a profile. Now, resident modeling and building a profile are the steps that happen after you figure out this population of residents you have living with you already. All of the folks who are living with you already, they're going to look just like your target customers. So the more you can replicate the folks who have already made the decision to move into your community, the more successful you'll be at finding people just like them. So let's meet Mr. and Mrs. DeVries. These are residents at your community, and we're going to build a profile around them. What do you know about them? Well, they have an annual income of $100,000. Very impressive. They lived within 10 miles of your community before they moved in. They fell within the age range that you like. Now, we're going to set aside just for a moment the factor of whether or not they lived with adult decision-making children. We'll come right back to it. But for now, we're going to focus on those three things, because this is how you found Mr. and Mrs. DeVries. They met your income requirement, they met your range requirement for proximity, and they met your age range requirement as well. But let's not look at them as Mr. and Mrs. DeVries for a moment. Let's look at them a little less formally as Doug and Kimberly. And here's what we didn't know about Doug and Kimberly that we found out after they moved in. Well, first of all, they're ballroom dancers. They own income-producing assets. And this is an important one because if you're looking for residents based on the fact that they have an income of greater than $100,000, well, maybe they own income-producing assets that are substantial, but that produce only $90,000 of income that, frankly, they don't even care about because they're well-heeled. It's more important to know about them that they own income-producing assets than specifically how much those assets produce, especially if they give gifts to charity. Maybe they are so well off that $90,000 in income is really meaningless to them and they give most of it away. Part of our resident profiling procedure is to take a look at what's called the charitable contribution index of a potential resident. And a lot of times, if they're giving away a whole lot of the money that their assets are earning, it tells a lot about them. They drive a Cadillac. Now, again, we're talking about an example that is hypothetical. So maybe it's not a Cadillac. Maybe it's another kind of car. Maybe it's some other criteria. But perhaps you didn't know based on income, age, and zip code that a great many of your residents happen to have driven a Cadillac before they moved in or drive a Cadillac now. And these are data points that we're going to take a look at like they belong to a social club. Now, these are 5 data points, and they are 5 just example data points. What we really do when we create a resident profile is we look at several dozen data points, maybe 100 data points. And we're not looking specifically at these 5. In other words, we may not exclude somebody specifically because they drove a Buick instead of a Cadillac, but maybe we look at 100 data points and find those to be the common ones, and then we address those folks who meet 85% of the 100. And those folks are going to live and behave and buy just like Doug and Kimberly. And how about these nice folks? They live with their adult children who are decision makers or at the very least have a heavy influence on where they live. And if many of your residents came to you from that multi-generational type of household, then that data point would exist in your resident profile as well. Again, we're not going to exclude them. We're going to include them if they met enough of the criteria in the resident profile. But because they, unlike Douglas and Kimberly, live with their adult children, maybe all we do is change the message up a little bit and tailor it a little more to them. And here's how we do that. We're going to take your marketing piece. Maybe it's a flyer, maybe it's a postcard, whatever it is. And we're going to say that it contains a headline and some content. And in reality, it probably contains a little more than that, like some images and some layout things that are unique to your community. But for the case of the example, we're going to deal with the marketing content and the headline. Now you have the first population, which was Doug and Kimberly, and they're independent seniors. And you're going to give them a headline that speaks to their active lifestyle. And then separately, your seniors living with adult children, maybe their headline is a little more tailored to convenience and care, so that when their adult children also read the marketing piece, it's appealing to everyone, and it addresses that specific concern. Again, your content does not change. What a great community you have, and how lovely the scenery is, and all of those things. They just get a headline that piques their interests a little differently. And we can segment those folks out and use variable content to specifically address what they're more likely to respond to. So, just to recap, how do you hook your target consumer? Well, you build a resident profile. You understand what your residents are like, and you aim right at their lifestyle choices. You market to like consumers based on that profile, and you tailor your message. Now, those things are all great. They're even greater when you reach your prospects through a variety of channels. Now, I've talked a lot so far about what we do at Fisher Group just because it's my experience. But the truth is, you can get these types of services from your preferred vendors if you already have them. A lot of data providers out there will do these similar types of things. So what I'm pointing at is best practices that we've seen be very effective for providers large and small. So reaching out through a variety of channels. Well, a great list will yield the best results when you reach out to your prospect with your message across as many channels as possible. This could mean ads in targeted local publications, direct mail postcards, flyers around likely frequented locations, posters around your community or local community centers, an email to those who choose to opt in, presence on social media, outbound phone calls still resonate with seniors quite a bit, including baby boomers, and resident referrals. This might be your greatest population because, again, resident referrals have friends who are already in your community. Those folks have more of an emotional attachment to your community because their friends are there. And again, they usually come to you at a lower acquisition cost. Now, it's not just that some people read ads and some people read postcards and some people are more reachable through email and some people pay more attention to social media. You want not only to reach all of these people through their most preferred channel, you also want to meet them in multiple locations so that your branding and your message is reinforced in several different ways. Now we'll talk about typical campaign execution, because in order to do all of those things, there are quite a few steps. So we're going to start with the most basic elements of what your campaign will look like, the visuals around your campaign. And we'll start here with your community relations director, who comes to you with requirements, details, specs, and ideas. Now she's going to take all of those things about your documents, your marketing collateral, and she's going to send them either to an agency that you use or maybe an internal graphic artist. And that graphic artist is going to come up with a great idea. And that great idea is going to be sent over in the form of a draft. Your CRD is going to take a look at it, send it up the chain for approval, and see what the boss thinks. Well, the boss doesn't look too pleased. Maybe she's got edits and revisions. And those edits and revisions lead to some adjustments, some new graphics, and some copy edits. And with those, back to the graphic artist or the agency, and you know what they do? Another draft. I'm sure all of you out there have been through this process before, and it can go back and forth several times. Hopefully you get a draft that you like, you send it up for approval, and she looks like she's a lot more pleased about that one. You can take that approval back to the printer to begin creating your documents. Now, this is an arduous process sometimes, but once you lock in certain components of your branding, like your community corporate colors and your layouts that please you and the fonts that you use and those types of things, once you lock those in, there's no reason to reinvent them every time you have a marketing campaign. So off to the printer we go. We do have an alternative, though, on Senior Living Smart, and I want to show it to you. By logging in, we'll go into the Marketing tab here. We're going to choose customizable flyers. Now, you also saw on that menu that there were customizable other documents like business cards. Those are certainly available on the Senior Living Smart site. With this customizable flyer, you have two options. The option that we're watching now is the option just to fill in the blanks with the details for your event. And if you have all of your event details locked in, you can save them because you're going to create a number of documents with those same details. We have design elements that you can use, a couple of different layouts that allow for images to be placed, and several selections of images that go in those boxes. So it makes it really easy just to fill in the blanks, create a beautiful flyer with a wonderful layout. You can use images that we've preloaded. You can use background images for borders, or you can select colors on our color menu, which I'll show you right here. And you also have the option of entering CMYK values if you already have your specific community colors. We want to make these templates as flexible and as usable as you can and still allow yourself the opportunity to identify your community through your branding on them. So a lot of variable content, a lot of customizable elements here, and you can play around and refresh until you find something that you like or until you lock down what you know matches your corporate identity. All of these details can be saved for all of the other documents that you'll create for your event. So we're working on the flyer, but since we used Saturday, April 19th at 1 p.m. as the event date and time, your poster, your postcard, all of the other elements of your marketing are going to contain these same things. So you can lock them down and take your saved content and load it into new documents, or create a CSV file very easily with a click of a button that you're going to use to, for instance, send over to Cisco so that Cisco can execute your email campaign or create your social media pieces. Enter it once, use it across all of the different channels. It is very possible to launch a campaign that includes your event flyer, your event postcard mailer, including doing the mailing, event posters, an email, social media, and do it all in about 15 minutes. So you've taken your process down from what could be several days or even weeks down to several minutes. Of course, branding and consistency really does set you apart, so I'll show you 3 documents that we created using that process. This is for an event called Waffles at Water's Edge. It's just a waffle bar brunch that is going to take place on Easter. And they've used the graphic of the Belgian waffle along with their approved fonts and their approved corporate colors. This is the event flyer. Using those same details, they were able to, again, in just a matter of a couple of minutes, create an event poster with the same content and an event postcard. You can also upload an Excel spreadsheet that includes all of your mailing list, and we'll even execute the mailer for you. So this is a full range of event campaign elements that can be saved and replicated and then used for all of your other things. The social media and the email will also include the graphic of the waffle, all the same approved fonts, and all of the event details that you've already entered. So now on to the do's and don'ts. Absolutely, every time, plan every detail, down to your parking lot, what your community looks like, what your lobby looks like when folks enter, how your prospective residents are going to receive the look and feel of your community happens as soon as they walk in. Find more residents just like yours. That means understanding your residents, creating a resident profile, and understanding the less visible attributes of your most likely prospects. Know the cost of acquiring a resident. If you are absolutely sure of your acquisition cost, you can make more informed decisions about your marketing, like how far you're going to reach, outside of your radius to acquire good customers, and what your marketing spend is going to be and how effective it needs to be. Absolutely integrate print, digital, and social media, especially since you have the tools available to you through technology to load them once and use them across all of those platforms. Leverage the best tools at your disposal so that you can integrate your print, digital, and social media, and absolutely have a long-term plan. These residents will come to you if you touch them a number of times. So look for a deeper understanding around how many customer touches these residents will require before they make a decision like moving to your community, which is, of course, a very important one. So these are the things to absolutely do, and here are some things to avoid. Avoid compromising quality in the details. Again, keep your parking lot clean. Print those name tags ahead of time. Make sure that your invitations look great. Make sure that your materials are consistent. Avoid neglecting knowledge of your resident. Knowing your resident is key to looking for folks who are just like them. Avoid blindly doing it all yourself. Of course, this means using Senior Living Smart partners like us and like many others who do something great and can do it for you at a very cost-effective way. But it also means involving your team, getting your team to buy in to the success of your event and helping them to understand specifically what they're all responsible for in the process. Avoid replicating steps that perform poorly. And again, this has to do with knowing all of the things that you're measuring. Avoid failing to measure your success. Take a look at those measurements. Study what you do well and avoid replicating what you don't. And avoid short-term thinking. Your first event following this webinar, I hope, is a great success. But even more, I hope that your first 3 or 4 or 5 events continue to be growing successes, because it does take time. It takes a shift in the way that you do things, and implementing those types of shifts will give you results over time. So avoid the short-term thinking, look in the long term, understand what you want to do, and that there are steps to get there. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us. Now that we've talked about the keys to a successful event marketing and that there are many ways to define the success of your events.
John, thank you so much for your time and your expertise on event marketing. That was really wonderful information. I hope people go away with a lot of good things to help with their future event planning.
Me too. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Have a good afternoon.